Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. At AM 630.
WMAL. 7 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. You know, it looks like Thursday's going to be a huge day in Washington, D.C. We're going to get the ObamaCare ruling from the Supreme Court, we now know for certain. And also on Thursday, House of Representatives is scheduled to take up a contempt citation charge against the highest-ranking law enforcement official in these United States, Eric Holder, the Attorney General. We thought that might be a good reason to get our next guest on the line. He is Ed Meese, former U.S. Attorney General under President Reagan. Now, I just want to say that you have something that I find quite charming in this period of attack politics. You don't ever really attack somebody who holds the office after you left, right? Sort of your personal policy, right?
That's always been my policy, as well as most of my colleagues who've been Attorney General.
Well, I admire you for that, but can we talk about Fast and Furious, though?
Well, let's talk about it and let's see.
All right, so you got this Fast and Furious thing out there. There were representations made by the Department of Justice to a member of Congress, in this particular case, Senator Charles Grassley, that turned out to be absolutely wrong about Fast and Furious. The assertion was made that we weren't doing what you say we were doing, and that wrong representation was allowed to linger for, as we are told, 10 months before the Justice Department walked it back. Now, in a situation like that, is it within the rights of the Congress to say to the Department of Justice, we need to know a little bit about that. We need to know exactly how it was you gave us that faulty information?
I think that this is a reasonable request by Congress. Darrell Issa is a very distinguished statesman. He is trying to get to the bottom of something which is probably one of the most serious problems that the department has had in a long time. And I think he is within his rights, and I can't understand, frankly, why this administration is stonewalling and why the president has exerted executive privilege unless he himself is somehow part of it.
So when you were Attorney General, if something like this had crossed your desk, saying, oops, we made a big mistake and now Congress is asking questions, would you have said, no, we're not going to give those documents?
Well, I hope we would not have. I think when I was there, of course, if they tried to find out something about an ongoing investigation or something like that, which is properly privileged, we would not have given up the documents. But here, where you have a very different situation, I believe we should have and would have.
Do you think that executive privilege pertains to this case?
Well, I don't think it does, because I don't know of any aspect of this which is within the normal function of executive privilege. And one of the things that we have to remember is that in the Nixon case, where the situation is somewhat similar, the court held that the executive privilege is not there to cover up wrongdoing.
And in this particular case, the wrongdoing is the plan or the Fast and Furious as it is together as a whole, or is it the actual letter that showed that there were false or misleading statements, or one would say lies, to Congress?
I think you have both aspects of it. And one of the things is Congress has a legitimate need to have information so that they can pass laws or change existing laws. And so I think they also have a right to find out why misinformation was given to them.
As Attorney General, do you work for the President or do you work for the people?
Well, I think I always held that I work for the people of the United States and I adhere to the Constitution. That's the person, or that's the entity whose oath, where my oath was to support the Constitution.
Well, when you look at this administration's and its Attorney General, do you see an Attorney General who's acting as an Attorney General who acts for the people or for the President?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm not going to criticize my
I had to try.
Specifically, but nice try. But let me say this about the administration. I've been disappointed because it looks, particularly by what happened in regard to Arizona yesterday, that we have a lawless administration that's gone over to the other side and is actually aiding and abetting the lawbreakers.
On that front, we were talking about, is there anything you can do as a state or as a city to try and get the federal government to actually enforce the immigration laws? Can you sue the federal government for not enforcing laws? Is that a possibility?
Well, there are limits to what you can do by lawsuits. One thing I would do if I was a member of Congress right now, particularly either in the Senate or in the House, I'd start holding some hearings right in Arizona where you could illustrate to the public how bad the situation is. And usually it's the glare of public opinion as much as anything else which causes the government to act.
All right, but there's this thing that we have in this country called the rule of law. And Congress has passed immigration laws. Constitution gives Congress that right. They've done that. It's been signed into law. The laws are on the books. You have an administration which has chosen to enforce some parts of that law and to basically say, well, we're going to use our prosecutorial discretion and not really worry about this other portion of the law which we personally disagree with. Is there anything that a state can do in a situation like that? When, especially in the state of Arizona, they're on the border and they're feeling the repercussions of what happens when people come into this country illegally, and they seem sort of helpless when the federal government won't come to their aid.
Well, I think that's true, and ultimately the check on a wrongful government and wrongful government action, or in this case inaction, is to change the government. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, as you've mentioned earlier, that's what the people have to decide come November, whether they want to continue this lawless administration.
But did this ruling from the Supreme Court basically show yesterday that if the federal government just said, you know what, we're not going to even protect the borders, and Arizona would have no recourse but to just live in a state where the federal government was not protecting its border?
Well, I think then, of course, Congress has a responsibility, too. The president takes an oath to see that all laws are faithfully executed, and when he doesn't, there's impeachment, there's voting him out of office. I think those are the remedies that we have under our Constitution.
All right. I know it's all reading tea leaves at this point when it comes to the health care law, but from the ruling that came out yesterday, the fact that John Roberts didn't write for the majority, is there anything that you can read into this or which way they're going to go on Thursday?
You know, I stopped trying to speculate what judges would do when I was in traffic court 50 years ago. so I don't think I'm going to try to guess.
Have you ever felt that some members of the Supreme Court actually do get into political trading, or do you think that they just look at it case by case? And some people say, well, did they go for the administration on Arizona knowing that they were really going to get them on the health care law?
Yeah, I really don't believe that there is this political trading, as you suggest. I think they really do take each case separately and try to do the best they can to define what the Constitution says.
All right. Well, Mr. Attorney General, we really appreciate you joining us here on WMAL.